Get higher, baby. Get higher, baby. Get higher, girl. Hey.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Knights of the Pageless Library. We are a little podcast dedicated to reviewing audiobooks. I am Bo Knight, and with me, as always, is my brother Ryan Knight. And today, we are taking a look at the strange case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. We're written by Robert Louis Stevenson and read for you by Richard Armitage?
Armitage, yeah, you got it. Yeah, and so again, we got to reiterate that we kind of called an audible. So we're gonna do Spooky Month for October. So we made some changes. So anybody who was looking forward to us doing the Hero's Guide to Saving Your Kingdom, it will be coming out at some point. Just probably not in October, but still look forward to
angry email.
Oh yes, please do. Let us know that you are upset that we didn't do that book. You can direct your emails at kotpl.pod@gmail.com. That is the easiest way to get a hold of us at this time. So after we did Monster Hunter Bloodlines, we have decided to do The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, sticking with October, Halloween, Spooky Month, trying to stick with some spookier titles for you guys. So yeah, we decided on this as one of the books we would check out.
So, have you ever listened to a Robert Louis Stevenson book? Yes, you have. Treasure Island.
We reviewed that book even.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Oh, okay. So, right. So, looks like Robert Louis Stevenson. I'm kind of seeing just these two titles essentially: Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde and Treasure Island, just rehashed over and over and over again on Audible. Yeah, and I would say these are widely considered classics among a lot of people. I mean, I'm sure everybody has heard of the story of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde in some way or another. I think this is where it originates from, though, correct?
Yeah, it is.
Okay. And again, we are doing the one narrated by Richard Armitage. So it looks like there are maybe some other ones on here, even on Audible.
I think this was an updated version because this one came out in 2017.
Yeah, because here's another one that was from 2015. Here's another one from 2018. So yeah, there's several versions. So just so we're all on the same page, if you listen to one of these other ones, your mileage may vary compared to ours. So just be aware of that. But send me your angry email and be like, I thought that so-and-so sounded terrible. And I'll be like, that's not the one we listened to, so...
Wrong again, idiot.
Yeah, but either way, yeah, so just so we all are on the same page, like I said. Richard Armitage. When did this book originally come out? Like you said, the Audible version we're listening to came out in 2017, so it's not super old. But the original book
version, it was first published in a magazine in 1886.
Holy crap. Okay. Wow. Very old story.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That makes sense then.
If you think about it, this book is kind of like where the Hulk gets his origins. If you think about it.
Sure. Oh, yeah, actually, yeah, that's very true. And this story has been told many different times in many different ways. But like we said, this is kind of where the story originates, as far as we know. Robert Louis Stevenson might have drawn, inspiration from other stories as well. But as far as we know, this is kind of where this story originates. So what did you think about Richard Armitage's performance in this one?
I think he does a pretty good job. I think he actually does a really good job, in my opinion. He's got a good accent that he puts on, because this book is supposed to be very British, or this story is supposed to be pretty British. I think he does a really good job.
I thought Richard Armitage was good for what he was working with, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
Um,
I do. It does make sense.
okay, I'm sure it'll come up later. Yeah, I mean, I think Richard Armitage seems like a very good narrator.
He's won lots of awards.
Yeah, and he has a pretty solid amount of books on Audible. So if you liked him in this book, you could definitely find other works by him. Looks like he has about 62 titles he's involved in on Audible. So he does have a lot of work under his belt, and I think it shows. I think he does seem like a very seasoned narrator. But I will get to that. I will circle back around to that, I think, a little bit later.
Okay.
So the genre of this book, I mean, most people pretty much know the story, I would say, of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. This is like a literature fiction / like I would say a horror classic, in my opinion. And I don't even know if it's 100% horror. If you really slow down and think about the story, it's definitely horrific. So that's why we put it on our horror section.
Back in the day, I could see this being very spooky.
Sure.
But I think by today's standards, it kind of meh.
Yeah, and I think that is exactly where I have, my issues with it. But again, I'll save those for later. So this book is very short. The version we listened to clocks in right at 3 hours and 7 minutes. Very short, very quick listen. Again, we listened to this one on Audible. I'm sure most people probably know that by now. That's pretty much where we get our content. So if you were to sign up for Audible, you could get this one for free. I probably wouldn't recommend doing that. You could buy this for $21.31.
Damn.
Yeah, right? Considering Bloodlines was only $25.
And like 4 times as long?
At least, yeah. This is also, though, included in your Plus membership if you're already an Audible Plus member. Yeah, this one is also included as well. So that's kind of nice.
So it's got that double free plus sick.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so on to the big questions. What do you think? Is this one easy to follow?
No, but I feel like that is because I am dumb and don't know some of the words.
I would agree with that. I think this one is very difficult to follow. If you are going to listen to this and you want to understand the story, I would say you need to just sit down and listen to it.
Yeah.
I was trying to do other things, not even like difficult focus tasks while I was listening to this, and I don't think I understood half of it. So
well, it's actually a very simple story, and I think they do the way that they like kind of tell it and then have it kind of retold to you.
I was gonna say it's essentially the same story told from what, 4 different perspectives is all? Yeah. So it's not a very like complicated story, but the way it is written, like this is very like poetic and stuff like that.
Well, yeah, but it's a product of the time it was written in.
Absolutely. And I think it also, I mean, if anybody's listened to like our Sleepy Hollow episode, kind of suffers from the same thing for me. It's so poetic that I have a hard time focusing on who's talking, what's happening, what they're talking about. So
yeah, the language they use is very flowery.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So what's your recommendation on this one?
It's a no for me.
Yeah, I'm probably gonna say that it's also.
You already said earlier. You're like, what did you say? You're like, I don't know if he's gonna get a recommendation.
Yeah, it's just I don't know. I mean, I understand it kind of falls on the like classics list, but again, I think just a product of its time for me is what it suffers from. I don't know if it's my short attention span brain or what it is. It's not very engaging as far as like you said, the very flowery language. So The reason I listen to audiobooks is so I can do other things while I listen. But I like to be able to be engaged with the story while I'm doing other things. And I could not do that at all with this one.
No, you really can't.
So
You might as well read it.
And you might have a much better experience if you did read it. I honestly think, because it might make even more sense. I will say I think this suffered a bit because Richard Armitage pretty much had the same voice for every character.
He does.
So I honestly, even though in the beginning of the book, like 3 different guys are talking to each other, I had no idea who was ever talking at any one given point because they all sounded exactly the same. So
Yeah,
that was
and
kind of a disappointment.
None of the characters really stand out to me,
No.
other
I would-
than Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. But,
Right,
like,
and I-
all the other names are like named soup. So I don't know who this is.
Sure. And I was just going to say the most interesting part of this story to me is about the last 25 minutes when
Yeah.
it's from his perspective.
Mhm.
Like that was the most interesting part of the whole book to me. But yeah, I mean that's kind of a resounding no from us. Again, like, you know, we're not experts, we're not that smart, so this
Yeah.
might be a good story to some people. Email us and let us know if we're the dumbest people in the world because this story, you know, foretold the coming of World War II. Please let me know, like, if it's something insane
think
like
it
that, and I
did?
just don't know. I don't know.
I like how you just try to sneak that right in there.
You know, I mean, I feel like that's the kind of shit people come up with these days, don't they, though? Like,
Yeah.
you're an idiot because clearly this book was talking about the way we were going to be destroying the world in 2021.
Well,
So,
I understood that this book was about human nature and that everybody has 2 sides, your good
Correct.
side and your bad side.
correct. And this man, Dr. Jekyll, has come up with a way to fully experience both of those.
Yeah.
That's what I took away from this. And in the long run, it wasn't really a good thing for him. I mean, that's really what it comes down to.
I'm kind of sad that he doesn't Hulk out like he does in League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
I was just gonna say the whole time, all I'm picturing is League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. That's the only thing I was picturing during this.
Which is funny to me that this story has been twisted so much that that's what I think of. Because
Yeah.
that's not at all what happens.
Gets thrown into a lot of stories that
It
way
is.
too. Van Helsing, it's in
Yes.
Van Helsing too. In the very beginning, that's who he's chasing is Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. I mean, so the character even gets put into a lot of different literature because this is such a classic story.
Yeah.
So with that, what do you think? Should we pass the spoiler wall and just talk about the story a little bit? I probably won't have a whole lot to say about it.
Yeah, past the spoiler wall. Like, if you're like, I don't want to know what Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde's about, then I don't even know who that is at this point. Who doesn't know what the story kind of is about? But yeah, go on, and then you can come back after you listen to it or read it and hear what we have to say.
Yeah. Yeah, so kind of like we've been alluding to, honestly, I had to re-listen to the beginning of this book twice because the beginning made no sense to me whatsoever. The little bit of it that I still grasp is that there are a few guys walking past, like they describe like a manor or mansion house, right? That's like run down and pretty shitty and all blocked up. And nobody knows who lives there or what goes on there. And one of the guys is like, well, I have a story about something that happened here, right?
Mhm.
And he proceeds to tell the story about seeing a man like run over this little girl, right? Like, I didn't fully get it because of the flowery way they explained it, but what I gather is he like bowled her over in the street. Shoved her
I
down
almost
or
thought it
something.
was like he was on a horse.
Oh, I thought it was just him.
I
Just the
think
man.
you're right, but like who like describing it as running down, but being on your feet seems odd to me. Is that just me?
No, I mean I think you're right, but I
But I think you are right that he was just on his feet and he like, you know, like boulder over and like stepped on her as he ran over her.
Yeah. And so basically, like, a bunch of people, you know, are like, they confront this man and they are like, what's wrong with you? You know, you just ran this little girl over. How could you do that? And they basically are like, we should take you to court for this. And he's like, what do we have to do to not go to court? And they are like, you give us 100 pounds. And he goes to that house that those guys are all looking at now. And he had a key to the house. And he unlocks it. And he goes in there and he gets a bunch of gold. And he also writes a check. And they're like, for sure the check's going to be fake. But it's not. And apparently that was like this dude's recollection of Mr. Hyde. Like, but he didn't know that's who it was at the time, right?
Yeah. And
at least that's what I understand of it.
Right, they didn't ask his name, I think. And he covers his face, I think.
Yeah, nobody sees his face in the opening part. Somehow.
Yeah,
I don't know.
What is this dude wearing, like the darkest like hood of all time? You know, like they have in movies where it's like you can't see their face, but that's not how real life is.
Yeah, it's not actually how light works.
Yeah, you can still see in there.
So then it goes to chapter 2, and this is from the lawyer's perspective. Is that right?
I think so. Who's Otterson? Is that his name?
Yep. Yes.
He's Jekyll's friend.
Yeah. He's friends with Dr. Jekyll, and the like. See, I can't even. I just listened to this book today.
Well, he talks to him right about his will because he changed his will to make it so if something were to happen to him, Hyde would get all of his money, and he finds that very odd.
That's right. Yeah, everything would fall to Mr. Hyde. That's right.
I think he was worried that Jekyll was getting blackmailed by Hyde. I think.
Yeah.
That's what I understood.
Right. And see, okay, I feel like this story, now that we're talking about it, this is a story that I almost wish I could go into not knowing the tale of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Because
impact.
Yeah, because already knowing it in the begin, like already having the gist of it when you start this, ruins the whole thing. Because up to this point, we wouldn't know that it's the same person. You don't find that out until the very end. But already knowing the idea of the story, maybe that's really what ruins it for me, is that I already had heard reiterations of this story so many times. But I could definitely see how back in like the 1800s, when this came out, it could be very impactful your first time listening to it.
Yeah, if we didn't already know. It would definitely hit different.
I think so, for sure. So, yeah, now I got that out of the way, so please continue.
Oh god, what happens next? Do we shift perspectives?
I think so. I think we go to chapter 3, which is...
Is this when the lady sees, like, an ugly man in a light on the street, and they, like, lock eyes, and he's horrible looking, and he's short?
Yeah, I think so. I think you're right.
But I don't remember what happens after that, I'll be real.
I don't really either. I honestly, like I said, I just listened to this today, and there's very few parts of it that stand out to me.
Is the next part when a servant sees Hyde beat that guy to death?
I think so, yeah. Because he's gonna go on trial, right?
Yeah, he is.
Hyde is supposed to go on trial?
Because he leaves behind half of a broken cane.
I think, yeah, that makes sense. That sounds right.
So he leaves behind half of a broken cane, and I want to say the guy that he killed was one of Utterson's clients. Is that right?
That makes sense. Yeah, that would make sense. Because that would be why Utterson has such like an investment in it. In the whole thing.
Okay. I don't understand this part, right? So Utterson knows where Hyde's apartment is, and he leads the police there?
To Hyde's apartment.
Hyde's, yes.
Right. But doesn't something come up too where they find like a note that is written by Dr. Jekyll? No.
Oh, yeah.
Hyde. It's written by Hyde, but some other person is like, it looks just like this note, which is written by Dr. Jekyll.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Like the hand is the same, or whatever they say.
Yeah, and so Utterson is like, why would such an esteemed man like Dr. Jekyll make a forgery for this insane person, basically, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's what happens as far as like how they convict him, but then how this Utterson guy gets curious as to what Dr. Jekyll's involvement is with Mr. Hyde, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, see, I'm drawing a blank. Honestly, I can only really remember like the last chapter very well, which is from Dr. Jekyll's perspective.
Is this when he starts hiding in the cupboard?
I'm not gonna lie, I don't know. I'm not sure.
Because that's one of the only parts I feel like I understood. Was that like he's like hiding in the cupboard. The servant hears him walking around all day in there. He puts the food out, the food vanishes. And the servant has to keep bringing this certain type of drug.
Okay, yeah, I remember that. I remember the servant saying this because they find something, right? And they're like, those are the things that Dr. Jekyll had me retrieving or giving to him or something like that, right?
I think. I'm gonna be real, I don't
think so. But I just remember the last chapter, which is from Dr. Jekyll's perspective.
Let's just skip all this bumbling around and like stubbing our toes.
Yeah.
On this shit.
Well, I mean, just in the last chapter is basically when it's from Dr. Jekyll's, it's his testimony. It's basically a note that he wrote explaining what happened. Because essentially, he's going to kill himself. So it's basically his suicide note. And what he explains is that he came up with this formula that allows him to transform into this Mr. Hyde person. Essentially, what it does is Dr. Jekyll, is normally like a very good-natured person for the most part, and he rarely likes confrontations. But he gets walked on a lot, is what I understand from the way he writes. He doesn't like how much people like to take advantage of him and push him around. So he came up with this formula that allows his, essentially like his angry and his mad side to take shape and come forward, which is Mr. Hyde. Then he can go around and do whatever he wants as Mr. Hyde, because then he'll just turn right back into Dr. Jekyll, and nobody will know that it was him doing those things all along. But basically what he comes to learn is that the more he does this, the more he is like, his Mr. Hyde side is taking over, essentially, is what I understood. That as Mr. Hyde, he's making sure he takes the formula to stay Mr. Hyde much longer than he would have wanted to if Dr. Jekyll was still in control, right?
Yeah, and that one time he goes to sleep as Dr. Jekyll and wakes up as Mr. Hyde, which I was like, oh, I like that.
Yeah, yeah. So then he really knows he's lost control now. And he also says that in the beginning, like Mr. Hyde was very much so like Dr. Jekyll's angry side. He was pretty small. timid,
Yeah.
sort of malformed. But as time went on, he grew in size and stature and like ferocity, essentially, till he became like almost a scary thing for people to even see.
Yeah.
So this final note basically is Dr. Jekyll saying that I am going to kill myself because I can no longer control this other side. And if anybody finds this note and Mr. Hyde is still alive, just know what he is, basically. And that part is really cool to me. Like, the last chapter is pretty cool. But like I said, I feel like already having the whole, like, already knowing the story of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde really kind of ruins this book. Just because I think it would have been so much more interesting not knowing in the beginning that it's the same person. You know what I mean?
Right, yeah, because immediately you're like, all right. I was expecting him to be big, too, and, like, hulking, but he's not in the beginning. He's small and little.
Yeah, which actually makes sense when he explains it in the end. That's
Yeah.
because it was taking form as his kind of angrier side, which was very small and timid in him. I really like those kind of details. I thought that was really cool. But yeah, I just think overall, this iteration, the original iteration of this, would have been good back in the day. I could 100% see why this is a classic and why it's been retold so many times. But the fact that it has been retold so many times is kind of what ruins the original.
Yeah, you're right. I wish, if I had no expectations, it would have been pretty good.
Yeah. I think this is definitely one of those times where, like, some stories, like, they've been retold and you come back to the original and the original is the best by far. This is not one of those times for me, in my opinion.
In this case, it's not that case.
Yeah. At least not for me. I mean, I think I think the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen obviously doesn't give the background on him, but
He's essentially a superhero in that.
Yeah, but the way it works in that story is just so cool.
Yeah,
you know?
it is cool. I might watch it.
I mean, and then the fact that other people get a hold of it too in the movie, and he's like, oh god, not the whole thing, when the dude just like pours the whole vial on himself. And now, after hearing the original story, I'm like, oh, no wonder it was such a big deal. Like, but yeah, I mean, I just think, this one, as far as like the whole story, and I think it's definitely comes down to the language they use, kind of the way they say it. Because
so there are words that we just don't use anymore, and a lot of them in this.
Yeah, I would say flowery is a great way to put it. It definitely is. Like, it's just very flowery and poetic and stuff like that. Whereas if you were told this story kind of straight up, like if somebody, which maybe one of these other versions of the story is like this, where it's much more for the simple mind, like mine, maybe I would get a lot more out of it. But I think as it stands, I just wasn't able to get into this one that much. So
I agree. I didn't enjoy it as much as I thought I was going to.
Yeah, I was kind of disappointed because I was like, man, this is a good pick for like spooky month, you know, it's gonna be scary. But overall, I mean, it was kind of a letdown. So,
got anything else you want to say about this strange case?
No, let's stop beating this this split personality here.
Okay. So, have we picked the next book yet?
Did we decide we're gonna do Tales of Terror by Edgar Allan Poe?
To me.
Okay.
I couldn't remember what it was called.
Yeah, so I think that'll be our next book. Hopefully, maybe it'll drop sometime by the end of the month, somewhere in there. You know, maybe we'll have
a little before that.
Maybe we'll have we'll probably have one more episode that we might be able to drop like on Halloween. We'll see how we do for time.
Oh yeah, that'd be good.
But definitely look forward to that. I think we'll take a look, like I said, at Tales of Terror by Edgar Allan Poe next. Definitely keep an eye out for more Anime Squires. Those should be coming out. Also, we are continuing with Charlotte. We're getting close to the end of Charlotte already. So if anybody has any more suggestions, please email us and let us know. We would really like to see some more suggestions so we can pick our next anime to cover for the show.
Yeah, we would love that.
For sure. You got anything else for this one, Bo?
Nope, I'm good. I feel like I'm in my Mr. Hyde form all the time.
Yeah, we all need some reverse,
Yeah.
the reverse serum, to turn us into Dr. Jekylls more often.
Yeah, but I think with that, we'll catch you guys in the next one.